So hello and welcome to Bold Business Podcast Show. This is Ros Jones, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Tracey Cleminson, Director of Arctic Bee. Hello, Tracey.
Hi, Roz.
Look, Tracey, you know what I'm going to ask you. Arctic Bee, what an amazing name. Now, I just thought you made websites, but what does the name Arctic Bee come from?
So, Arctic bee is a symbol of resilience. It's really interesting. The Arctic bee does actually exist, and it's a bee that lives in very cold climates. It hibernates, and it hibernates to the point that you would wonder if it's still alive, and then magically it comes back to life again. And that's a real symbol, not only for the journey that I've been through, but also for the clients that we work with in terms of building resilience for their business and, reinventing themselves through branding or marketing. Yeah, so that's where the name comes from. And my background is a background of there's an element of mental health and domestic violence, so it's something that really resonates.
So how did you first come across an Arctic Bee? Are you into bees?
I love bees. We wouldn't be alive without bees. So
That's
yeah, I
true.
do love bees. And I've always loved them. I love bees, butterflies, nature in general. But yeah, when I was looking for a company name, I was researching and having a look and coming up with different adjectives and things that resonated. And I came across the Arctic bee. As I say, I didn't know it existed up until that point. And I was so fascinated by it. I thought, you know what, that really does represent where I'm coming from and how I'm reinventing myself and how effectively I'm coming out of this darkness and coming back to life. And the business for me has been an absolute lifesaver. It really has given me a lifeline
Yeah.
from a very dark place.
Wow. So do you mind us exploring that a bit further?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so did you have the company before the dark place, or you came out of the dark place and set up the company?
So I was working full time in education, in senior leadership. I've got a background in managing alternative provision and working in prisons and working with young people and adult offenders, as well as being a secondary school teacher. So a long career in
Wow,
education.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. There's a whole story, another story there.
Yeah, I've had a really interesting career history, and I really was kind of top of my game in terms of leadership. And I ended up having a real kind of burnout moment and ended up very ill. I built my first website back in 1999. And I've always kept a very small portfolio of clients, just a handful of friends and people that I know, really, because I've always had this feeling that it's a good idea to have another string to your bow. I've always felt like it'd be good to have another skill to fall back on. And thank goodness, because web design's evolved over the years. So when I had my breakdown, I ended up in hospital. I had quite a significant suicide attempt. And I was ill for about 6 months. I mean, I could barely get out of bed. I remember going to the doctor and her saying, "Wow, you've got changed." And I changed my cardigan in 10 days. That's how ill I was.
Wow.
And I got to the end of that 6 month period, and it was about the time that we went into lockdown. And it was pretty clear that my career in education was over. You have to be on your A game mentally to be in a leadership role within that profession. And, it was just untenable that I could carry on with the level of stress and burnout that I'd suffered. So I
So
thought, well,
what do you know? So what caused the stress? Was it just overwork?
there were several things leading up to it. I moved to a city, which I was very unfamiliar with. I was very isolated. I suffered an assault at work and my foot was broken, which contributed to the isolation.
Wow.
That also brought flashbacks from a previous relationship, which had been violent. And there was a lot of stress at work generally. We'd moved into a new building. There was an awful lot behind it that had contributed to that. I wouldn't say it was one thing. Um, and I almost didn't feel it coming. It kind of crept up on me. And I just remember one evening thinking, I can't go to work tomorrow. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I just can't do this anymore. And yeah, so that was it. I thought I was going to go to sleep and not wake up the next day, but I did. And ended up in hospital. And thank goodness I did, because I'm still here to tell the story.
Yeah. Wow. That must have been a grim time.
It was a really, really stressful time. And yeah, there's no dignity in a suicide attempt either. When I look back on it and I think about all the mess I was in, not just mentally but physically as well.
Yeah.
Lying in that hospital bed, it was for 3 days having a liver flush, and it was, significantly ill. I'm just wondering how I'd got there. I think there was an element of being
Yeah.
shell shocked as well, because, like I say, I just got to that point where, looking back, I can see the signs. But at the time, it just felt like it had crept up on me. And I think I just reached breaking point. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And then 6 months of a very, very dark period where, I knew my career was over and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And actually, I know lockdown had different impacts on different people. For me personally, it came at the right time.
Mm.
Because the isolation that I felt no longer mattered. Yeah, everybody was isolated.
Yeah.
In actual fact, I think I spoke to more people during that first lockdown on Zoom than I had done in the few years leading up to it, because
Mm.
you started reconnecting with people and talking to people. And so I got to the point where I thought, well, you're either going to sink or swim. You're either going to stay depressed and you're going to end up doing this again, or you're going to come out fighting. And I knew how to build websites, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do.
That must have taken a lot of energy. So what changed it? Was it a sudden, like a flash of lightning, or was it just a gradual build up, or did you get lots of support with you?
As I say, it was lockdown. So there was a certain element of, can't go out, I need to do something. And it was a very slow process. It probably sounds easier than it was. I started off by setting myself a little daily goal every day. So it might be, today I'm going to cook a meal, or try and cook a meal because I'm a terrible cook. Tomorrow I'm going to post something on social media and ask for help if anybody knows anybody who wants a website. And then that gradually built up to, today I'm going to build a website. So bit by bit, every day, I had a small goal, and it was part of my therapy, part of my process towards healing. I didn't actually set the company up straight away. Formally as a limited company, I actually did that in May 21. But those steps leading up to that were really part of my recovery to get to that point where I felt, yes, I'm ready. I can definitely do this now. So it definitely was a slow process. It definitely was a day by day, just one tiny goal every day to really pull myself out of that period of depression.
Yeah. And did you have like a mentor or any help, or was it just you living alone, just pulling yourself up each day?
Before lockdown, I wasn't getting the support that I needed. And I went and stayed with a friend in London for a month and registered with a GP down there in order to get the help that I needed.
Right.
And that makes me really sad, actually, because there is a bit of a postcode lottery when it comes to mental health support. I did get some support when I came back in terms of online therapy, but there was quite a waiting list for that. So, that help that I got in London was really important. I had the online therapy, which started, I believe that started during the second lockdown, and that was helpful. It was good, but still, I feel that I had to dig deep within myself to pull myself out of it. I think therapy is there as a useful guide, but ultimately you've got to want to do that work yourself. You've got to
Yeah.
get to that point where you've got to want to pull yourself out of it. And
Yeah.
and I was at that point where I really felt, like I say, this is make or break. I need to do something. So I had to dig really deep and just drag myself out of it and get myself to where I needed to be step by step.
What was your motivation?
I have children who are grown up, so they're obviously always a factor. But if I'm really honest, I think the motivation was myself.
Yeah.
I actually feel that I needed to feel that there was more life ahead of me.
Yeah.
I wanted to give myself the best chance. And I think that, as I say, my children is so important to me. But ultimately, there has to be a want for you to do this for yourself. in
Yeah.
order to pull yourself out of that place. So definitely myself, and then I employed a couple of young people and they became really important as well. Actually, I've got a team of young people, and mentoring them and supporting them
Yeah.
really keeps me going. That's my motivation for the business now, actually, to keep it going and keep supporting them and keep nurturing them for the future.
Yeah. Wonderful. That is such a great story. So I can understand how you were tuned into the name Arctic Bee, because you are the Arctic bee
Yes.
who's come out of hibernation and is just like so resilient.
Yeah, and I think I mean that period of depression was important, but back in 2013, I actually suffered quite a violent, sustained attack from an ex-partner. So
Wow.
I was in a very violent relationship, and he ended up with a 5-year prison sentence.
Wow.
And I think that contributed towards that depression as well. So actually surviving that, when I look back and think about what I survived, I don't look back on myself and think, oh my gosh, I've been through so much. I actually look back and think that everything that I've been through is an experience that's actually contributed towards something really positive. And yeah, those experiences have really, really fed into where I am now and given me quite a lot of resilience and the ability to bounce back when things go wrong. So if I'm having a hard day or lose a client or it's been a difficult week, there's always that kind of thought process of, do you know what, you've been through worse. You're going to be
Yeah.
okay. You're going to get through this. Next week's another week, next month's another month. And
Yeah.
actually, having been through domestic violence and having been through serious depression, and both of those times I nearly lost my life, it really helps you put things in perspective.
What I find with my clients is that they're in business and that's when they need to, and that's the testing place where they have to learn resilience. But it sounds like you learned your resilience in life. And so your business is easy after all of that.
I don't know what to say. It's easy. Yeah. But it definitely puts it in perspective.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. So, in terms of domestic violence, I mean, has that been something that you've continued? Lots of as you know, I was involved in these campaigns, the speaking out movement that I got together a few years ago. But and on the way, I've met so many people who have are survivors of domestic violence in some format, and have emerging from it have then been, quite vocal about their own campaign to help do something to help get more notice taken of it, get it spoken about in Parliament, that kind of thing. Is there something that you've done with that, or are you just glad to leave it behind?
I had my case raised in Parliament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I used to work for an MP, so he raised it for me back in I was 2014. I do some public speaking locally, and I do have a website which is itsfinished.com, which is not just about domestic violence and narcissistic abuse as well, actually, because I've experienced that as well, which is something slightly different. I know there can be some overlap, but you can't label everybody a narcissist. That's a very specific type of emotional
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
So I have my website, it's finished.com, and that's really to help people at the heart going through heartbreak. And I also have a TikTok channel, which is amazing actually, because when I post, I get so many comments and people that identify with it and are going through the same thing, or quite a lot of direct messages. And just to be able to even just share what I've been through kind of lets people know that they're not on their own, that this does happen. And, when you put a post out and you've got thousands of comments on it from people all saying, this is exactly what I went through, I think it helps everybody in that community to know, this is something that other people go through. Because when you go through it, you can feel like you're the only person in the world. And I think the other thing that's really common with both domestic violence victims and people who experience narcissistic abuse is the self-blame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which as a result of gaslighting
Yeah.
is really hard to overcome. And yeah, I spent a long time after that attack really feeling responsible, not just what had happened to me, but my father passed away a year later. But what I'd put my father through, what I'd put my children through, there's a lot of self-blame. But ultimately, And I did something else as well is that people say, well, you've been in, more than one abusive relationship. You must attract abusers. Well, nobody attracts abusers because if somebody showed their abusive colours when you first met them, you wouldn't get involved in them. These
Exactly.
men can be very manipulative, and women sometimes as well. Obviously, domestic violence can happen to men and in same-sex relationships as well. But nobody gets attracted to somebody that is abusive. Just some abusers are very good at, that love bombing phase, at
Yeah.
drawing you in, at building up a false sense of security before they start to show their true colours. So,
I think that's what it seems, that they're very attracted to people who are vulnerable and
yes.
know how to play that, as you say, the love bombing kind of gaslight, that kind of game. I have heard that as well. Um, but I can imagine that, when people speak open, are brave and courageous enough to speak about these things openly enough, and it is still very much such a taboo subject, isn't it? But
Yeah.
so many, you'll know the stats. It's sort of 1 in 3 women, isn't it? It's supposed to be 1 in 5 people, 1 in 3
Yeah.
women, 1 in 7 men. So 1 in 5 people experience some form of domestic abuse in whatever format that is. So you're bound to have somebody on your TikTok audience who's experienced it. So, it is a really brave thing to do. And as you said, people who are experiencing domestic violence are deliberately isolated to allow the gaslighting to continue. So, managing to reach people through a social media platform, I can imagine, is very powerful.
Yeah, it is. And just, as I say, I've had some direct messages and just to direct message one person and say, you know what, you're not on your own. Please seek some support. Consider speaking to a therapist.
Yeah.
So call a domestic violence helpline. Just try and get some help because it's not just people that have been through it. There are people that message me that are actually still in it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And that's really hard. And, the one thing I'd say to anybody listening to this who is in an abusive relationship is it's very easy to think that you are going to be the person that is going to change the person that you're with, that they're going to go to therapy, they're going to get help, that somehow you're different from all the other partners that they've had. And that's not the case. You're not going to change them. And actually, abuse escalates.
Yeah, exactly. It goes along a pathway, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's a fabulous story, Tracey. Thank you so much for sharing. So we've really got, when I opened this discussion to ask you about how the name Arctic Bee came about, I think we've got the message of it now. Definitely resilience, and definitely, woken up out of this, sort of cast your former life aside to set up this new amazing thing that is the Arctic Bee Company. But tell me, because I know that you've been, you never stop. You've been, I know you did a master's in, I think it was branding, I think, was it?
It's digital marketing,
Digital marketing. But your dissertation focused on
personal branding.
personal branding. And so tell us, what's your goals for this year? The year ahead must be to do something with that, I guess.
I'm setting up Be Elite, which is going to be it's still going to be part of Arctic Bee, but it will be specifically focusing on personal branding and encouraging people to develop their own personal brand, particularly on LinkedIn. And, a lot of people are very nervous about putting themselves out there, putting their image out there. So it's really going to support people to develop that confidence and use their brand to promote themselves and promote their company or their charity or their organisation through their own personal brand, and also to help teams of corporate executives to align and make sure that the personal brand of everybody in that team is actually aligning with what the business is doing and helping to promote the values of that business as well.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing that. You've called it Bee Elite. I quite like the elite bees as well, actually. So you can have a hive of elite bees. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got to keep with the bee theme,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
love bees. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tracey. And I wish you all the best for your personal branding elite bees. And thank you
thank
so much for
you.
sharing your really super powerful story. Thank you. Carry on being amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.